It is Wednesday, my dudes, which means it is time for another first thoughts and initial impressions Epic 7 video. This one will be on Lone Crescent Bellona, the newest Moonlight 5-star hero that was shown earlier this morning over on Stove. Gotta be honest, at this point, it felt like we were never really gonna get a Moonlight Bellona. I felt like if a character had gotten a summer variant, there weren't really ever gonna get a Moonlight 5-star variant because like Euphine hadn't really gotten one, but then I remembered Issaria kind of has, so like it was only a matter of time, right? Regardless, as always, if you have watched these videos in the past, you could expect my 2 cents on the character. Do I think they're good? Where do I think they're going to be played? How would I actually play them? What artifact would I use on them? Things of that nature. If you do like this style of content, as always, please, you can help me out a ton by remembering to like this video and subscribing to the channel if you're not already. Again, really, really does help me out here a ton and lets me continue to make this style of content into the future. With the introduction out of the way now, let's take a look at Bellona's S3 animation.
Rude, ignorant, immoral. These words are too good for you. Become like the autumn leaves and scatter upon the ground. Oh, them! I hardly noticed them.
Holy hell, I love this character's aesthetic. I love that S3 animation so much. I love the little like brush strokes, like the ink strokes when she's actually kind of doing like her combo on the enemy, and I really like the flourish at the end with all of the artistic choices. Just this character is just beautiful from, head to toe. Just really, really well put together. In the English dub of Epic 7, we've talked about this before in the past, but Bellona, as well as characters like Ravi and Apocalypse Ravi, are voiced by Frida Wolf. You could take a look and see what they've done in other videos, such as how to play Seaside Bellona. Unlike Seaside Bellona, however, Lone Crescent Bellona is actually a warrior as opposed to a ranger like other Bellonas have been in the past. That's right, she is actually a dark warrior of the Scorpio zodiac symbol. Being a Scorpio, she of course shares a stat line with characters like Arunca as well as the ReZero collab hero Rem. Taking a closer look at her stats, she has 1,208 attack, 6,488 health, 102 speed, 616 defense, 15% critical hit chance, 150% critical hit damage, 3% dual attack chance, and no effectiveness or effect resistance. Imprint release is health percentage for the team, and concentration is going to be attack percentage for the team. I don't really think you need the imprints on this character that much. They're nice to have, but traditionally, health is good in trying to survive an aggressive situation, and then attack percentage is just, again, a nice to have. It's not really that amazing when you compare it to something like, say, critical hit chance, which is a huge, huge deal for a lot of characters. Backtracking to the stats here for just a second, Bellona is average to above average in every single stat except for one, which is that 102 base speed that you may have noticed. That is pretty slow, especially for this late in Epic 7's lifespan. Character needs to be supremely tanky, I feel like, for them to be able to play at a 102 base speed rating. And when we take a look at Bellona's skills, I think her biggest pitfall is actually this combination of 102 base speed along with a lack of survivability mechanic, which we commonly talk about in a lot of my videos. For a character to be PvP viable, I feel like at the highest level, they really need some kind of survivability mechanic. However, there is something that we'll talk about that all of Crescent Bellona's moves have in common that may actually make it possible for her to see play even if she doesn't have that survivability mechanic. Let's just jump in and talk about the skills now before I beat around the bush any further. Bellona's S3 is Quixotic Crescent. You acquire 30 Fighting Spirit upon use as well as 3 Souls. It has a 4-turn cooldown. Attacks the enemy by moving unpredictably before granting Vigor to the caster for 2 turns. When the enemy is defeated, grants Vigor to all allies except for the caster for 2 turns. A successful attack always results in a critical hit. When the caster has a buff, increases damage dealt. Soul Burn for 10 souls decreases the skill cooldown of this move by 2 turns. All right, so let's quickly talk about three things in this move. Number one, the vigor. Number two, successful attack always triggers a critical hit. And number three, if the caster has a buff, increases damage dealt. First off is vigor. I think vigor is going to be very important for this character. Obviously, vigor is a very strong buff. Conqueror Lilius is one of the best characters in the game thanks to the fact that she gives your whole team vigor and her incredibly high base speed. Vigor giving you extra attack and defense is going to be a godsend because, spoiler alert, this character has no survivability mechanics in the kit. Historically, that's usually not a good thing for a character. They either need to be blazing fast or make sure that they can actually take a hit. So vigor does help in that front. My biggest concern with this character is going to be twofold. Number one, the character is just going to get one shot by somebody because same base stats as Rem. Rem easily dies to a character like Luna in one hit, even through something like mitigation, unless they actually get that vigor buff up first and foremost. Yeah, that's like not a good sign. And while you might be saying Luna's not very played right now, she's almost non-existent in high-level PvP, a character like Zahak can put up comparable numbers, or a character like top model Lulika can put up comparable numbers, and those do actually see play in high-end arena. So my biggest worry coming into this is that the character would just straight up die in one hit before she actually had any game impact. And then you get to the second part we talked about, which is a successful attack always results in a critical hit. And that translates to all moves in this character's actual kit. Every single move in this character's kit has a successful attack always results in a critical hit. What that means is we don't need to build any critical hit chance on this character. Whereas a character like Rem desperately needed to have critical hit chance in order to do the job, you don't need to do that on Lone Crescent Bellona, which means we can build this character even tankier than Rem. So my Rem has about 1400 defense with like 22k HP right now, and I would say mine is a bit more skewed on the defensive end than the offensive end. My offensive stats are about 3000 attack with like 250 to 260 critical hit damage. That's what my Rem looks like. So I can basically jump all four of those stats that I just gave you even higher because I don't need to invest in any critical hit chance. That means if you really wanted to, you could build this character supremely tanky, like 1600 defense, 24k HP. You need to see the damage multipliers because you don't want her to hit like a completely wet noodle, but it does give me some confidence, the fact that this character can be built crazy tanky and also have the vigor buff. That means that she might actually be able to take a hit. She might actually be able to survive. And I will say this now, I do think that this is a turn 2 player's character. If you're a Banshee gamer, I think that this is going to be the character for you. I think when this character first comes out, a lot of people are going to try to play her on speed set. And I do think speed set will be viable. But I think at the end of the day, the best builds will be marrying sets from things like Banshee and Azumanic. I expect this character to be very good on the counter set and the lifesteal set, which will become incredibly apparent once we talk about the S2 passive in just a second. And I do think that this character is probably going to be wanting things like immunity or unity set from Azumanic in order to be super successful. The last thing that I wanted to talk about with this move was when the caster has a buff, increases the damage dealt. In the video, if you actually watch the mock battle, this move does upwards of 31,000 damage to a target. That is Dark Corvus Straze one-shot territory. That is a very, very high number. As I say in a lot of these videos, we need to see the actual damage multipliers on this move because it could be very good. And we need to also see how consistent that damage actually is, because this could be magical Christmas land because maybe the character has higher multipliers than they would have on live. Maybe they have an attack buff and the vigor buff, and they have a fully stacked passive, which again, we'll talk about the passive after this. So that could all be something. Maybe the multiplier when you have one or more buffs is also just very, very high. I just don't know. We'd have to wait to see. But this character looks like, from what they've shown, to be somebody who has an impressive amount of damage. And again, if she can overcome her low base speed and her low survivability, I think we might be cooking with something. Moving on to the much alluded to S2 passive here now, it is Waxing Crescent. After attacking, increases the attack of the caster by 10%. This effect can stack up to 5 times. When an ally is attacked, gains 15 Fighting Spirit, and when Fighting Spirit is full, consumes all Fighting Spirit to activate All Eyes on Me. All Eyes on Me is an AoE counterattack that increases the combat readiness of Bellona by 20%. A successful attack always results in a critical hit. I should note, and it should be somewhat obvious, but I feel like it bears stating, a successful attack always results in a critical hit means that this character is always going to critically hit unless the character dodges or you miss from a blind buff. That means things like critical hit resist on Senya will not save you. Things like your critical hit resistance buff from Diane and Shu will not actually save you, which means logically this is a character that is good into Diane, into Shu, into Senya. So if you are having trouble with those characters on, say, Guild War offense, because they are very commonly played on Guild War defenses, then that would mean that Bellona would be a pretty good pickup for you. Moving back to Waxing Crescent, though, you could see here that it says the attack increases by 10% whenever the caster attacks, which means either one, you want to be playing a lot of speed in order to actually max this passive out as fast as possible, or two, you want to be playing her on something like, say, Counter Set and Unity Set in order to actually kind of cheat the system and potentially let RNG stack this passive up for you, which that's probably the route that I would go. In an ideal world, you would play this character on like Counter Unity and be extremely tanky and just get the passive stacked up through counters, through dual attacks, and through All Eyes on Me counters. That would probably be the way that I would go about it. Although, with my recent experience playing in the Emperor rating against Emperor players as well as like Legend players right now, debuffs are like super, super crazy common and very, very good. And immunity has actually been kind of a blessing against characters like Command Model Leica. So I think upon release, I would probably play Bellona on like counter immunity or like lifesteal immunity, if at all possible, because that would be super good. The reason for lifesteal is because obviously when you have an AoE attack on the move, if it has good multipliers on it, you will be recovering quite a lot of health. In the video, they use Sigurd Scythe on the actual character. That is definitely an option, going counter set with Sigurd Scythe, or lifesteal plus like Proof of Valor or like some other damage oriented artifact could also be another way to take this actual character. But yeah, overall, just based on these two things in the passive here, where it's the stacking thing plus the AoE counter, I think, again, I really would go a turn 2 setup on this. Whether, again, that's counter or lifesteal, I leave that to you. Speed, probably still a fairly good option on her, but again, I don't think it would be my first choice. The last move in the kit is Bellona's S1, Delicate Crescent. You acquire 20 Fighting Spirit upon use. Attacks the enemy with a fan before granting immunity to the caster for 1 turn. A successful attack always results in a critical hit. So this is another reason why I really like counter set on this character, because when you counter, you were cheating the system and getting Fighting Spirit faster, which means you were countering faster. You're stacking up that S2 passive. Also, you get immunity on the S1, which means every time you counter, you get to keep up your immunity buff, which is really, really nice in this, meta that we're actually in. Because again, debuffs are super, super common. Yes, there are a lot of openers that strip, like your Faithless Lyticas and your Conqueror Liliuses, but after that initial, wave, immunity is really, really important, especially because, again, there are a lot of characters. Solitaria is everywhere. Characters like Ray, for example, are showing up more and more often. So having a character that can counter to grant themselves immunity is really, really nice. You can kind of do that pseudo Little Queen Charlotte thing we used to talk about in the past, where essentially you just keep spamming your S1 in order to keep immunity up, and there are certain characters that just can't actually deal with that. They can't break through. A character like Solitaria would obviously be able to, with her S1 having a partial strip on it, and a character like Pirate Captain Flan could also break through it. But there are still some characters, like we talked about with Leica, where having that immunity up all the time that they can't punch through is still really, really nice. So again, my thing with this character is it seems like a turn 2 character. it seems like a potentially very strong turn 2 character with the actual multipliers. If the S2 All Eyes on Me has a multiplier akin to Seaside Bellona of like 0.7 or even higher, then this character seems like they're going to be in a fairly good spot, at least from a damage perspective. S3 in the video, again, was one-shotting characters, with some pretty high damage. So damage, I think, is not the issue with this character, if there is any. And it's definitely not the actual, like, kit. If there's anything I think that stops this character from seeing play, it's the fact that she could potentially just be picked off before she has any game impact. And I think she could potentially also be controlled super easily because she really doesn't have a whole lot going for her against the types of debuffs that are commonly seeing play outside of, again, this like counter S1 scenario that I'm talking about. So yeah, definitely want to pair this character with a cleanser for sure, especially if you are a turn 2 player. But yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about Bellona. I do think she is worth pulling. I don't know if she'll be a slam dunk, like, broken unit of upon release because, again, like I keep saying, character's very slow, character's very susceptible to potentially being killed in one hit, and character's also very susceptible to being controlled. A character like Apocalypse Robbie, for example, is super easy to control without something like Crimson Seed, and this character will be coming out when Crimson Seed is actually getting nerfed. So, yeah, again, I think you're going to want to pair this character with mitigation. I think you're going to want to pair this character with your cleansers. So something like ROL plus Hand Guy, feel like, best friends for Bellona. Something you're definitely going to want to do. And that's pretty much all there is to say about Bellona. Again, I'll be pulling for her. I do think she is a strong character, but my reservations, which I've made clear several times now, are very, very apparent. But those, again, are just my opinions. Let me know down in the comments below how you guys feel about Bellona. Do you think that she is a slam dunk character? Do you think she's going to be broken? Do you agree with me that she has the potential to be just one shot or controlled super, super easily? Let me know any and all things. Would love to hear from you. As always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I will see you all on Friday to talk about the balance adjustment preview. Bye-bye now.